Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm your host, Meredith Dykstra, and I have Dr. Pompa on the line, of course. And today we have a very special guest. You probably see our format's a little different. We're usually recording on Google Hangouts, but today we have a special guest, Dr. Bruce Lipton, calling in, joining us from Skype today. So we're so excited to have him on the show. And before we jump in, I'm going to read a little bit about Dr. Lipton. So Bruce H. Lipton, scientist and lecturer, received his PhD at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. He served as an associate professor of anatomy at the University of Wisconsin's School of Medicine, and Lipton's research on mechanisms controlling cell behavior employed cloned human stem cells. In addition, he lectured in cell biology, histology, and embryology. Bruce resigned his tenured position to pursue independent research into creating quantum physics with cell biology. His breakthrough studies on the cell membrane, the, quote, skin of the cell, revealed that the behavior and health of the skin was controlled by the environment, findings that were in direct contrast with prevailing dogma that science is controlled by genes. Lipton returned to academia as a research fellow at Stanford's School of Medicine to test his hypotheses. His ideas concerning environmental control were substantiated in two major scientific publications. The new research revealed the biochemical pathways connecting the mind and body and provided insight into the molecular basis of consciousness and the future of human evolution. Bruce has taken his award-winning medical school lectures to the public and is currently a popular keynote speaker and workshop presenter on topics of conscious parenting and the science of complementary medicine. To learn more, visit brucelipton.com. So welcome, Dr. Bruce. We're so excited to have you here.
I am excited to be here, too, because I'll tell you the truth, this is an opportunity to talk to a wonderful audience with the guidance of a wonderful teacher. So I'm very happy to be here with you, Dan. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome, yeah. Hey, Mary, you might want to mute. I hear a little feedback, and I don't think it's coming from Bruce because he has headphones on. So, so listen, Dr. Lipton, we are grateful to have you here. I feel like the first show that we did several years ago on Cellular Healing TV, we should have had you as a guest. In my mind, you're the father of cellular healing. I mean, come on. So, and I think as time goes on, you will be known as the father of cellular healing. Okay? But yeah, I mean, I teach cellular healing. I have sayings, Doc, that you can't get well until you fix the cell. And these are the things that I teach to doctors, all around the world. And, a lot of it has come from your research as a stem cell biologist. Wrote the book, Biology of Belief, 10 years ago. I think I read the book 8 years ago and got, just locked into it. As a matter of fact, my 5 R's, Dr. Lipton, R number 1, remove the source. R number 2 is regenerate the cell membrane. And we're going to have that conversation in some depth today. But I have to ask this question. First of all, how did you get into this topic? I know there's a story. How you got into this?
Well, Dan, it's a very interesting story because I was teaching at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine, teaching the conventional curriculum about how genes control life, a concept referred to as genetic determinism, that our physical, our behavioral, our emotional characteristics are locked into gene programs. And you have to realize if you're teaching that, what does it mean? What it means is you're teaching doctors to tell patients that their life is controlled by genes and that they don't control the genes because the genes are self-actualizing. Genes turn on and off and they control who we are. I'm teaching that. I say, well, what does it mean? Well, what does it really mean is this. If that's true, then we are victims of our heredity, meaning our life is already predetermined to some large degree, even before we're born, by the genes that we receive that we cannot change. So in the classroom, I'm teaching victimization, basically. And in my research, and this is, you got to realize this is like 48 years ago, I was cloning stem cells. Now, 48 years ago, you say, well, how many people in the world were really researching with stem cells? And I could probably count them on my hand. And I happened to be in a unique place at a unique time in the right, everything was just right for it all to come together. And I said, well, what was my research? And simply, cloning means this. You take one cell and put it in a petri dish by itself. So I isolate one stem cell. You say, a stem cell? I go, yeah, let's simplify it. A stem cell is an embryonic cell. It's just an embryonic cell. And so why do I call it stem cell? Well, I call the cell an embryonic cell to the moment you're born. And then right after you're born, I look at the same cell, not call it a stem cell because you're not an embryo anymore. So recognize an embryo cell is multi-potential. It can form anything.
Yeah.
I say, why do I have stem cells? Well, this is most important for our health, and that is this. Every day we lose hundreds of billions, with a B, hundreds of billions of cells die every day. And this is normal attrition. The issue is this, is like, well, how long can you live if 100 billion cells are dying every day? You have to replace them. And that's what stem cells are for. They keep the number of cells balanced as they die every day. The other ones die. Let's just take a moment, a little sidebar here, and just recognize this. There's a tendency for people to see themselves when they look in the mirror and they say, oh, a single human, a single organism, a single biology. And I go, true, but a human is made out of about 50 trillion cells. Yeah. I go, why is it relevant? Because when I say Bruce or when you say Dan, that name is not for a single thing. It's a name for a community. I'm made out of 50 trillion cells. And I go, the cells are the living entity. Right. Bruce is an absolute, by definition, Bruce is a community of 50 trillion cells. And so therefore the cells are the living entity, and we in our consciousness are like a government controlling the fate of 50 trillion cells. Okay, so we have to recognize that the power of cells in here, because we are cells. Okay, so I take one of these stem cells, put it in a culture dish by itself. It divides every 10 or 12 hours. So there's 1, then 2, 4, 8, 16, double. After a week, I have 50,000 cells in the petri dish. Most important point, they all came from one parent. So 50,000 genetically identical cells are in the petri dish. I then take those cells, split them up into 3 different petri dishes. Okay? And here's what I do. I change the chemistry of the culture medium. Sidebar. Culture medium? Well, if I take cells out of an organism and put in a culture dish, I have to try to recreate the environment from which they came. I say, and cells are like fish. They live in an aquarium, fluid. That's why when you cut yourself open, fluid comes out because cells live in fluid. So I say, well, the fluid that cells live in is really derived from the blood. So if I want to make culture medium and I want to grow human cells, and I take a look at human blood composition and then try to synthesize human blood composition into culture medium in my dish. If I grow mouse cells, I look at mouse blood and try to, get the composition. So I match the blood type and the culture medium for the cells. Okay? But since I synthesize the medium, I can change some of the composition. So I have 3 dishes with genetically identical cells, but I change the composition of the culture medium chemistry a little bit in each of the dishes.
I mean, you're changing the cell's environment.
The environment, the cells live in that. So it's just like when you look around you, the air you breathe, the water, the food, everything is your environment.
So it's like
cells are
cell in a new home. Or
a new home, yeah. It's like, it's like taking people off the planet and sending them to another planet, which is called plastic petri dish. And then, so this
planets, you're from the same cell, putting in 3 different little homes or planets. Got it.
Yeah, 3 different planetary environments. And so what was relevant is that in one dish the cells form muscle, in a second dish the cells form bone, and in a third dish the cells form fat cells. Well, there's one overriding, most profound question. It says, well, what controls the fate of the cells?
Yeah, wow.
You start with the premise, hey, they're genetically identical. So you can't say the genes in this one cause muscle and the genes in this one cause bone. It's they all have the same genes.
Right.
So then it wasn't the genes that made the decision of what the cells become.
Right.
What it is the environment. So each different environment is information that the cell reads, and then the cell adjusts its genetics to fit the environment. That's right there is the most important health-related statement I could ever make.
Absolutely.
Cells biology is a complement to the environment in which the cells live.
Now, right there, I have to stop you, because that is the old dogma was you got diabetes because your mom got it. You got cancer because your dad had it. You got this because your parents had it. But what you're saying is this is a whole different science that that you've been studying now for many years. that the cell really becomes who we are by its environment, not because it's what it's programmed to be.
Well, let's clear that up just a little bit, Dan, and that is this: is that the cells. Okay, let's talk about the family. There's cancer running in my family, and anytime we had running in family, that term in conventional biology is translated as genetics.
Right.
What's running in the family is you're passing genes from mother to father to child, down. I go, yeah, so every time we talk about something running in a family, it's always been psychologically associated with must be genes that are controlling this because it's in the family. We now know with the new science that since environment is controlling the genes, then basically the families create environments that are passed from generation to generation, environments to thinking and behavior. A child learns behavior by observing the parents, so whatever the parent's behavior is, the child expresses the same behavior. Since behavior is now associated with genetics, then all of a sudden I say, well, when there's something passing through a family, can I attribute it to genetics or to behavior? Well, now we look at both of those, and guess what we find? About 1% of illness, 1% of illness is associated with genes being transmitted from one family to the other. Well, that is profound because it says, well, if 1% of illness is due to genes, then what the heck is the other 90+% of illness due to? And if it's not due to genes, then what is it? Because if you know what that is, then you have power. But if we attribute everything to genes and find out only 1% is related to genes, then we're missing 90% of where health issues are.
We're not born doomed to,
no.
Just because we do inherit our parents' DNA, we're not born doomed to develop these characteristics. We have the ability to change who we are.
That's exactly what the culture experiment showed. For example, you say, okay, I have the same genes that my parent has. Okay, so I have two culture dishes with the same genes. I go, yeah, but if I put this one in environment A, it will form muscle, and I put the same one in environment B, it forms bone. Then all of a sudden it says, yeah, I have the same genes, but it didn't tell me what the fate was.
Right.
See, so that's the difference. And let me just add this, just so, it's like conceptually it's very important to recognize when they were tracing the fate of children adopted into families that have cancer. They found that the adopted child would express the same family cancer with the same possibility of any of the natural siblings, yet the adopted child has completely different genetics. So
wow.
The whole idea was what? The cancer was running in a family not because of genes, but because of an environment that was passed through the family lineage.
Right. It turns on certain genes, triggers certain genes. So the environment literally turns it on. I have to say this, though, Bruce, because, most doctors still believe the old dogma that basically there's nothing you can do. You got the gene from your parents and you're unlucky. Am I right on that? I mean, you're in the science.
Unfortunately, you're 100% right. And I have to recognize that, look, going to medical school is not easy for anybody. Okay, having been a professor at medical school, let me just tell you, I see students come in with great desire to save the world and then get programmed with these beliefs in their head, no freedom of thinking. As a matter of fact, it's interesting because in medical school, we never really ask the students to think. We ask the students to remember. And so when we teach something in a medical school, it really becomes almost like concrete belief. Yeah. So when a person learns that this is the way it happens, and they leave medical school, that's the belief that they carry. And I say, yeah, but since what we're talking about, the new science of this genetics is actually called epigenetics. And let me just clarify that for people. It's most important. Because we go, oh, yeah, genetics. I go, yeah. When we say genetic control, that's what we used to say, or still say, many people, genetic control, they're saying control by genes. I go, yeah, and I said, what's the new science? I said, it's epigenetics. So when we say epigenetic control, it means something totally different. I go, what? And I say, epi means above. So when I say genetic control, control by genes. When I say epigenetic control, that says control above the genes. And all of a sudden it says, wait, the control is not in the genes. I go, no, the control is in the environment. And when we get to humans specifically, our perception of the environment. I go, why is this relevant? Well, when teaching in a medical school, genes control life, you're a victim of your heredity. Teaching epigenetics, it says, wait, your genetics is based on your environment and your perception. I go, well, why is that important? I go, we can change our environment. We can change our perceptions. And all of a sudden it says, oh my God, then I control my genes. And the genes don't control me. And I go, that's it. But when was all this new science? Well, since 1990. I said, well, that's a new science in 1990. When does new science come into medical school? I said, it takes 10, 15 years before a new science is established enough to become part of a curriculum. So I say, well, then what does that mean? I say, well, most doctors out there, their last state of education, if it was within the last 10 years, let's say 10 years ago, had left medical school with a belief of genes controlling life. And then even introducing a new science, it didn't radically just change overnight and say, oh, the whole thing is environment now. It's slowly coming in. So I say, issue with medical. It's based on what we teach in a medical school. And if we don't teach the current, most up-to-date moment thing going on, then our doctors are not practicing from that new awareness. And this is why there is a hesitancy, so to speak, of accepting the new biology in medicine. Except the reality is this: it's inevitable. It's inevitable that epigenetics is a revolution, because the difference is I am not a victim of my genetics, because I, through my perception and my ability to control my environment, have absolute control over my genetics. And all of a sudden it says, oh my God, we're not victims, we're masters, but without knowledge of mastery, we've been messing it up.
We're going to talk about how to master it better, because the fact, okay, great, we can control it. Now, what do we do? But I have to say this. I mean, back in the Human Genome Project, that was in the 1990s, right? I mean, back then, and they set out to prove, a certain number of genes that humans must have, right? Because we're so much more sophisticated than the lowly worm in the mouse. Therefore, we must have at least 100-some-thousand genes that we're going to discover. We're going to bring the best scientists around the world to discover this. But they discovered something else, Bruce. They discovered that we have about the same number of genes as a worm. I mean, is that real? Is that how that happened?
Well, it turns out that the surprise was that they were expecting over 100,000 genes. And you have to remember, the belief was that a gene controls a function. So you need like 100,000 to make a complex human.
Right.
And then they assess the genome and find 20,000 genes. It's like, but that's the same number as that microscopic worm. Right. So it's all of a sudden, because remember, consciously, what we were thinking of is genes give the character and control of life. So if you want to understand evolution, then we'd look at it as increasing complexity of genetics. So we created an evolutionary tree based on primitive to more complex organisms, and said, this is all due to genetics. And so there are a higher number of genes in the top animals and lower number of genes. And then when the human genome results came in, said, oh my God, the humans up here at the top have the same number as the lowest one, then it basically said, wait, our belief system is totally wrong. It's basically wrong. And this is like why epigenetics is not just a new science, it's a revolution. It upturns a whole century of genetic research that says we are the expression of our genes, and turns around and says we are the ones that control our genes, and therefore we are the ones that control our expression. And this is so wonderful, because after a century of telling people you're a victim, we now can talk to people and say, look, you have the ability to change the reading of your genes and control your health to an absolutely high degree of control. And if you know about it, you can do something about it. If you don't know anything about it, that lack of information, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
A lack of knowledge is a lack of power. We have been disempowered by the belief in genes when it turns out to be flawed. And now we need to re-empower.
I think one of the things people have to understand, and you tell me if I'm wrong, all humans have 99.9% of the same genes. Wait a minute, hold on a second. You look a lot different than me. How is that statement even close to being right?
Well, the whole idea is, the first thing is this. If you say that genes control things, then different genes would have different control. But if I say genes themselves are controlled by the environment, then I can have 10 different genes, but the same environment can alter the reading of these 10 different genes. And I am really more an expression of an environment.
Right.
And then the idea about that is, this is like, where did health come from in our Western civilization? You say, well, the medical community has created health, and because we used to be all sickly and all kind of stuff like that. And it goes, well, not actually. Health came from environmental people who started to recognize that pollution and swamps and dirty water and foul things in the environment are causing our health problems.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden, once we cleaned up and sanitized the environment, then we had all this health. So the basic idea was, even from the very beginning, the concept of genes really was second to the environment, because they already knew just cleaning up the environment saved human civilization. And now we have a genetic understanding of that with the new science.
Well,
that the environment, yes.
I love to talk about the university study. I think identical, right? Same genes in mice, and they exposed one group to a toxin, and all of a sudden you had fat mice. Who, by the way, their ancestors were born doomed to become fat, not because they had the gene, because the gene was turned on by the toxin, the environment. So they changed the environment. They fed them the same. They exercised them the same, but they give them one little toxin, change the environment, and all of a sudden obese and other diseases occurred. So toxins are an environment change that can change the expression of a gene and cause all these bad things to happen. We see that all the time. Now, your book, The Biology of Belief, goes beyond, yes, toxins can take and change genes. We get rid of toxins, we can turn off bad genes. But your book talks about thoughts, how our thinking can drive inflammation of the cell membrane, ultimately change the genetic expression for better or for worse. And good thoughts could downregulate cell inflammation on the membrane and also change who we are. So, talk about that, because that's the empowerment that you're talking about.
Okay, well, this is what also changed my life, because the idea, here I am teaching in a medical school the conventional science about genes and all that kind of stuff. Then I find out that it was the environment by changing the chemistry of the culture medium. So I said, wait a minute. The culture medium is my version of blood. And I said, well, okay, what is the relationship between my study of cells and tissue culture in a human body? I go, well, here's the point. As I said, when you look in the mirror and see yourself, you're not seeing a single entity. You're seeing 50 trillion cells under your skin.
Right.
Then the joke is that we are a skin-covered petri dish with 50 trillion cells inside.
Right.
I go, yeah. And I said, we have culture medium. Of course, the original culture medium called blood. And I said, yeah, but in my study, the chemistry of the culture medium changed the genetics of the cell. And I go, it makes no difference if the cell's in a skin-covered dish or a plastic dish. Right. It still responds to the culture medium. Oh, yeah, but in culture medium, in the body is called blood. And I go, yeah, that's where we created culture medium. And I go, wait, next question. Well, if the chemical composition of the culture medium is that powerful in controlling biology, what controls the chemistry of the culture medium? And I go, the brain. The brain is the chemist. And I go, well, what does that mean? I say, simple. Let's look at it right away, because that's the whole mind-body thing. It's done as soon as we say this. I say, the brain creates the chemistry of the blood. And I go, yeah, but what chemical should the brain put in? And I go, what picture does the mind hold? Simple point. We're both sitting here, eyes closed, and when we open our eyes, we see someone we love. I go, mind, interpretation, person I love. My brain releases dopamine, pleasure. I'm in pleasure of the one I love. It releases oxytocin. Yeah, that's bonding me to the source of my pleasure. It releases vasopressin in love, because vasopressin makes you more attractive. It releases growth hormone when you're in love. So I say, the blood of your body, the culture medium, the chemistry changes to dopamine and oxytocin, vasopressin, and growth hormone just with a vision of love.
Wow.
I go, and I say, what's the significance of that? And the answer is very simple. And the answer is this, is that when people are in love, the chemistry of their culture medium, their blood, the chemistry of their blood, creates health. That's why when somebody's in love, they say, look how they glow. They're so in love. And I go, the glowing of health is because the chemistry released by a brain where the mind is in love is chemistry that promotes health. Okay, simple.
Reverse it. What about on anger and stress, anger, and worry.
Well, that's just it. Let's look at it this way, because this is the biggest problem on the planet today. You ready? And that is this. Stress is related to fear. Something is not going to work out.
Right.
And I said, oh, okay, same person just a minute ago that opened their eyes and saw something they love, same person, this time opens their eyes and sees something that scares them. And I go, first thing is this, that chemistry of love, that's not going to be secreted by the brain. What's going to be secreted by the brain in fear? Stress hormones, inflammatory agents. I go, what's the relevance of that chemistry? When I add those chemicals to my plastic culture dish with cells in it, the chemistry of fear shuts down the growth of the cells and actually can lead to the death. Fear kills. And why is this relevant? Because I said the human body is a plastic culture dish covered by skin in this case. It creates culture medium blood. The chemistry of the culture medium changes with the picture in the mind. And so how does the cells know what to do? Because the mind is telling the cells what's going on. And the cells are adjusting their biology to keep you alive in this world. But if the mind misinterprets the world, then the cells don't get a real shot at what's going on in the world. They only get your interpretation of what you saw. If you are under stress, even if there's no real reason for stress, your cells don't know there's no reason for stress. They'll just be stressed, and they'll cause the illness. So what do we know now? 90% apparently of doctor visits are directly due to stress. I go, what does that mean? The mind, in the perception of fear, protection, is releasing chemistry that gets you ready for fight or flight. I go, what's the relevance? I say, this is the whole reason right here, the health on this problem. It goes like this. Fight or flight means I'm going to use my arms and legs. I got to run away or I got to fight. And I say, so what do the hormones and chemicals of fear do? They shut down all the mechanisms of the body that don't have anything to do with protection to allocate all the energy of the body for protection. Point. Let's say you have a bacterial infection and you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. And I say, okay, you have energy to fight the infection. You have energy to run away from the tiger. How much energy do you want to put into running away from the tiger? And how much of your energy do you want to fight the bacteria? The answer's silly. If the tiger catches you, the bacteria problem is not a problem anymore. So the idea is this. Stress hormones shut off the immune system. Why? Well, that's protection on the inside.
Survival.
I have a bacterial infection. I'm being chased by a tiger. Bacterial infection doesn't mean anything. So the point is that stress hormones shut down the immune system to conserve energy, to run away. Secondly, remember I said you have to replace hundreds of billions of your cells every day because that's what's dying. I go, yeah, but that's growth. I say, yeah, but growth is shut down when you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. So basically it says you're shutting down things to conserve all of the energy to run away from the tiger. So things that are not necessary for running away, I don't need them. You say, well, that could be a problem. I go, in the old days, this is the issue. There was a tiger. It chased you. If you got away from the tiger, there was no more stress until the next tiger. And I say, and what about today? 24/7, 365. I say, oh my God, every day, every minute, we are putting stress hormones in the system. And every day, every minute, those hormones, by definition, shut down or inhibit growth and immune system.
Wow.
And I go, well, what's the consequence of that? I said, death. That's the only consequence from that.
Disease. You know, how you view your world is how your world becomes around you. You know, I mean, that's the fact. I mean, if you're viewing things as stress, you know, one of the things that I had learned years ago from your work was that your thoughts can actually drive cellular inflammation, which is what we talk about. If the cell membrane becomes inflamed, we're changing our DNA, not for good, but for bad. You know, and it was a stretch for people. They didn't understand, how could your thoughts drive inflammation? So maybe some people are still having that. We get toxins attached to the cell, drive inflammation, change the epigenome. People get that, Bruce. But their thoughts can drive cells to DNA to change. You know, how do we get people to understand that?
Well, it's basically getting down the fact that the environment controls the cell. That's a given fact. I say, what's the environment? The blood. And I go, fine. And if there are toxins in the blood, bacteria in the blood, okay, they can affect, that's local environment, that could affect the cell. Sure. And I say, yeah, but what else? I said, just changing the chemistry of the blood is what changed the fate of the cells. That goes back to the original experiment. So it said the chemistry changed the blood. And I say, yeah, but since the chemistry is changed by thought, and we come down, I say, yeah, but a thought of what? Fear? Adrenaline? Epinephrine?
So you get the call that your kid's in trouble. You feel something go over top of you. Your thought just triggered adrenaline, cortisol. You feel that feeling. Your heart ran up. So my thoughts just made my heart run. If I thought a lion walked in the room, even though it didn't, my heart rate would go up. I'd be in a fight or flight mode, and my cells would be reacting, correct?
Absolutely, because your cells only the cells only see the picture in your mind. They don't see the real world. So your mind is supposed to interpret the real world. Right. And if there's a mistake in your interpretation, then that means the cells are not seeing what the real world is. The cells are seeing what you have a belief in your mind. You know, it's kind of funny when I try to give this in a lecture. I talk to people and say, when you were young, you probably played with something like paint by numbers, which is you get a picture with an outline with all the numbers in it, and then there's a paint box with numbers for each color, and then you take the color and you touch and fill in the thingies, and then you create this Picasso picture, and it's really beautiful. And then I want to tell people, so here's the simplicity of biology. This is the simple. There's no way of getting out of this simplicity of it. Is the mind works with paint by numbers in reverse. Point. First, you start with a picture in your mind, and then the brain breaks down the picture into numbers, but the numbers are not paint, they're neurochemicals. And those neurochemicals are released into the body to do what? Create a physical, behavioral complement of the picture. Whatever the picture, I have a picture of fear, my body will manifest a physical fear. Yeah. And so basically it says, your thoughts are being translated into your biology. I mean, look, 2,500 years ago, the Buddha said, what you think is what you become. Your thoughts are turned into reality. I'm going, this is not magic, New Age voodoo. This is direct chemistry. A thought activates neurons that make the picture of the thought. Those neurons, in turn, cause the release of chemicals, which turn that picture into biology. And there, all of a sudden, that's the whole thing. Are you living in fear? Are you living in love? Are you living in health and harmony? Are you living in a world that you see is falling apart, and therefore you are going to be falling apart with the same image? And this is like, we've been trying to change the chemistry. It's like, no, change the thought, not the chemistry. The chemistry is the thought. You don't have to mess with the chemistry. Just mess with the thought. Because a new thought releases different chemistry.
I mean, how dangerous it is to define yourself, with a disease. I mean, just think about that, right? I mean, when you say...
Well, that you just said it. That was the key right there, Dan. So just think about that. And I say, yes, think about the diagnosis that you have cancer. Now I say, what's the picture that's going to be in your head? Every damn fear picture you can think of is going to show up in your head. I go, and every one of those pictures is going to release what kind of chemistry? I said, the chemistry that's going to shut down the immune system and actually lead to the diagnosis. And basically, we have to understand, this whole mind-body thing comes down to this simple understanding. Placebo. I said, what's placebo? And everyone says, I know what the placebo is. That's when you take a pill and you think it's real, and then you get healed. And then you find out the pill was a sugar pill, and then you have to say, then what healed you? And the answer, well, obviously not the sugar pill. Right. I say, then what healed you? And the answer is, the vision of healing, because the pill is going to do it for you. So you healed yourself with your thought. And I go, that's great. Everybody understands that. No problem. I have no problem with that because everybody understands it. Here's what I have a problem with. That placebo, by definition, represents the consequence of a positive thought. This drug is positively going to heal me. And I go, great. What about a negative thought?
Nocebo.
That's the nocebo, but the public doesn't really know about the nocebo, and even most of the physicians don't talk about it either. And I say, why is it relevant? It says, as much as a positive thought can generate healing, a negative thought can generate every disease entity that we have on this planet.
Absolutely.
And I go, we never talk about negative thinking. I go, It's the power of thinking. It's
Right.
the power of thinking. Positive thinking takes you in a positive, healthy direction, and negative thinking takes you down in this other thinking. Why is it relevant? Because if you just understand the psychology of people, and psychologists will tell you that most of our thoughts are negative, disempowering, and self-sabotaging. And I say, well, if those are our thoughts, then what can be the expression of that? And I said, a health crisis that the planet is experiencing right now, and it's not due to bacteria and viruses and germs, it's due to that.
Wow. I tell you, I experienced this because I was very sick some years ago myself, and I, very toxic with mercury. After I got some dental amalgams out, became very sick. Well, I got well. It took some years. I got the stuff out of my brain. My DNA started changing. However, there was neurological pathways that my brain became very hypersensitive to every chemical on the planet. Even though I was well, these neuro pathways genetically were set up, and one little sniff of the smallest chemical, I would react, horrifically. I had to change it, Bruce, and I did it by changing my thoughts about those chemicals. And it was a process that I became better and better at. We've talked about it in past shows. But I became able to enter my world, and now these things don't affect me. But I had to rechannel it epigenetically. I had to rechannel the pathways. I experienced what you're saying. I created the world and did the world.
Well, that's exactly, you are the poster child of this whole thing at this moment, because that's exactly what the whole story is about, is recognizing that our thoughts are primary in controlling our biology. And then I have to say, yeah, but what are your thoughts? And that's where I again tell you, the psychologists tell you, almost all of our thoughts are not supportive of who we are. And it's unfortunate because most of this occurred during our developmental period in the first 7 years of our lives. And this is where we downloaded most of our behavior in our subconscious. And I go, yeah, but where did you get the behavior? And I go, a child's brain operating in theta, lower than consciousness, which is alpha, vibration. You're measuring the EEG, put wires on a kid's head, and read brain activity. A child is not predominantly expressing alpha consciousness until after 7. Well, that means, what consciousness was it experiencing before self-consciousness? I go, it was in a lower vibration called theta, which is imagination. I go, of course, a child under 7 can mix the real world and the imaginary world because their brain is operating in theta, which is imagination. So a mother says to the child, give me the broom back, and the kid is looking at the mother like questioning, like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is a horse. I'm riding a horse. To the child, at that moment, that broom is a horse. Theta, imagination, taking that and turning it into reality, okay? I go, well, that's nice. Theta is imagination. And I say, but here's the problem. Theta is hypnosis. I go, well, what's the relevance of that? I say, look, before you can become conscious, you have to have a database. You can't be conscious with no data. And I said, well, where do you get a database? I said, you're born into the world. There's all new reality. How can I deal with it? And the answer is, the first thing is download. What is this world? How does it work? I don't know anything about it. I say, well, that's what nature gave us the download period, first 7 years. The download period is how to deal with the world that you've just been born into. I said, well, you're a new kid. How the heck do you know how to behave? And I say, design, hypnosis. Watch your mother, watch your father, watch your siblings, watch your community, and not just watch them. It's on record. How they behave is how you behave. And the nuances are fabulous if you think about it. I mean, just this one example. How a father talks to his own child is not the same as a father talks to somebody else's child. It's not the same as the father talks to the mother. It's not the same as the father talks to another adult. It's not the same as the father talks to the policeman. And guess what? A child, by watching their father, will learn every one of these, just by observing how the father behaves. So I say, well, this is the download period, the first 7 years. And I say, what's relevant? Those are the programs that essentially run our lives. And I go, yeah, but I say, what's relevant? And I say, and this is important about child development and child psychology. Parents, this is a critical nature of how we got affected and how we affect others, okay? Parents act like coaches in raising their kids. I say, what do you mean like coach? I go like this, look, a kid on a team is playing a sport. He's not doing that well. He's just hacking off, not really playing, okay? And the coach comes up and says, You don't deserve this, being on this team. You don't deserve this. Who do you think you are? You can do better than this. And I go, why would the coach say all that? And the answer is because the kid will understand, like, okay, I've been hacking off. Now it's time to get serious and do better to make, the coach wants me to do better. I'm going to do better. And that takes thinking. That's the issue. You have to understand what the coach is trying to do when he says you're not good enough. Doesn't mean you're not good enough forever. It just means that you're not good enough at this right now. I said, great. But I said, what about a child under consciousness is not operating? Theta is operating. I say, what's theta? Record. So I say, okay, the parent acting as the coach says to the kid under 7, you can do better than this. This is not good enough. You're not lovable. Not forever, but for right now. But the father's thinking that, but he's saying you're not lovable. And I said, yeah, but what did the kid download in all this? Not lovable, not worthy, not good enough, not whatever this or that, can't do this, can't do that. And so I said, yeah, guess what? Psychologists reveal that, again, 70% of these programs are disempowering, self-sabotaging, and limiting. Not because the parent meant it, but the parent didn't understand. A child under 7 is not conscious enough to interpret the meaning. That was when I, as a coach, say not good enough. I'm only talking about the fact that your behavior at this moment is not right. But when a child records not good enough as a program, not good enough is the rest of your life. And so I say, what's the issue? And the issue is this, is that most of the programming that we got has disempowered us, has told us we're weak, frail, vulnerable. And I say, why is that relevant? Because if you hold those pictures of fruit, weak, frail, vulnerable in your head, then you're going to release chemistry to do what? Create weak, frail, and vulnerable.
Isn't that the problem? I coach people. This is what I do. I teach doctors. I coach people. This is what I love to do. I love changing lives. But I see that limit in people. I see that they're creating their disease. I see that their thoughts are creating their failures, their success or non-success. What do we do, Bruce? What do we do? How do we change that? Because it was programmed. How do we change it?
Yeah. Before I get into that, let me a little sidebar, because I love this one, because it's like, oh, this is new science. I go, 400 years, the Jesuits have said, give me a child until it's 7 and I will show you the man. People didn't realize, what the heck? Okay, that's nice. What does it mean? It means, give me the first 7 years of programming a child and I will describe the outcome of this child's life, because you become the program. And they knew that. They just said, give me 7 years and I will show you the man. I will show you what will result. I will create. And I go, well, that's 400 years old information. That information hasn't disappeared. We have all been programmed. And it's interesting because the significance of that is the movie The Matrix is called science fiction. It's a documentary. We have all been programmed. That's true. Everybody who's been a kid for 7 years, brain was on program. And then I say, and since most of the programs are negative, then you can understand why today's health crisis exists. You can understand why the world is so engulfed in violence and all this stuff, because this is the programming.
Especially and toxic thoughts. How do we win?
So the only way is you have to change the programming. That's the important part. And I say, well, can you change the programming? You damn well better know that you can. Because if you can't change the program, this is the worst interview in the whole world, because then I say, oh, I'm sorry, that's the rest of your life, forget about it. No, we can change the programming. Then I say, but there's been a problem. And here's the problem, is that most people think, they say, the mind. Oh, a singularity, a mind. I go, no. Recognize that there are 2 parts to the mind. We know the names, but you have to recognize they're 2 interdependent parts, are not the same thing. Relevance, they learn in different ways. That's a critical part. And they have different functions. Okay, so there are 2 minds do for different things. And yet, when you combine them as one, that means you really didn't understand. No, there are 2. And I said, well, what are the minds? So let's give the name. Conscious mind, which is the latest evolution of the brain, and subconscious mind, which was there before the conscious mind. I say difference. Subconscious means behavior that does not involve consciousness. It's like automatic. Push the button, play the program. No thinking. And conscious is creative. Well, that creative mind is what made humans in their creativity, create the world that we have today. Okay, well, I mean, the good stuff, the technology. We've also, unfortunately, have to own, we created the war and the violence as well. We created the whole thing, okay? And that comes from consciousness, and consciousness can learn because its creative ability makes it learn very easily. And I go, okay, so what's the difference between the two minds? Functional difference. Consciousness is the equivalent of manual control. First, let's say, what is consciousness? It's right behind your brain, forehead. It's the prefrontal cortex is the seat of it. It's the site of where you as an identity are. You as a spirit, you as a unique entity is the conscious mind. The subconscious mind is a record playback device. That could be anybody's subconscious mind. It's not you. You are conscious mind. I go, oh, okay. So the conscious mind is you, and it's creative. And I go, yes. And I say, then this is the point. You ready? Conscious mind has your wishes and desires.
Yeah.
Because that's a vision of, a future. Subconscious mind does not see a future, does not see a past. This is important. Subconscious mind is only in the present, always is in the present, and does not distinguish forward and backward time. Conscious mind can think into the future. Conscious mind can recall the past. It can travel. Okay, so I say, when you are controlling your biology, your vehicle with your conscious mind, you have the hands on the wheel, and you're taking it toward creativity. I go, this is great. And I say, what about subconscious mind? I go, subconscious mind is programs. Just push the button and the program plays. And it's a habit mind. So it's the habit mind, not the creative mind. And you go, people think, well, it's the negative mind. I go, no. It's a recorder. It's not bad. It's not good. It's a recorder. The programs can be good. The programs can be bad. But don't blame the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind is unique and powerful. But wait, well, hey, man, when did you learn how to walk? When you were 1 and 2? I go, do you ever have to learn how to walk every day you wake up? I say, no, once you learned, it's in there. Once you learn how to drive a car, you know how to drive a car. You don't have to relearn it. Everything that we learn that we need to make our lives easy can be downloaded as a program. So I can ride a bike, drive a car, I can have this conversation without really thinking about it because I know how to talk and I know language. I can program, okay? So I go, okay, great, subconscious is good programming, except that if you put bad program in there, it plays just exactly the same. Push the button and you play the bad program. And I go, okay, so what's different about it? And I go, here's what's different. Conscious mind, creative, not time-bound. Go into the future, go into the past, whatever. Yeah. Subconscious mind, always in the present moment, and only habit, essentially. There's a little creativity, but small. So basically it's habit. Push the button, play the behavior. You learned it when you were 1 year old. You're now 90 years old. Push the button, play the same behavior. Why? It's a program. It always plays the same program. Okay? So the idea is this, and here's the catch where this is where the whole thing goes wrong, is subconscious mind, hands on the wheel driving, subconscious mind, autopilot. When you're not driving the vehicle with your conscious mind, you could still carry out all your functions with subconscious mind because you know most of them, your job, you know your life. It's a program. You can do it. Okay, and I go, well, here's the relevance, and this is now cutting the line. This is it. When we're thinking, so I say, hey, Dan, what are you doing on Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock? If you actually going to answer that question, I said, where do you find the answer? It's not out here anywhere. It's in here. Yeah. I go, oh, well, if I'm going to go seek an answer with my conscious mind and it's inside, then by definition, my conscious mind's not driving the vehicle.
Actually, Bruce, the answer is in here. It's on my calendar somewhere. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, that's the program mind. and so the relevance about that is simply this, is that when you're thinking, by definition, that means you're letting go of the wheel and letting subconscious drive at that moment. So if you're walking down the street and you have a thought, you don't freeze until the thought's over and then start walking again. It's like, no, I'm walking down the street, I'm paying attention, but if I have a thought, my conscious mind goes inside, but I'm still walking and I'm still paying attention, but not consciously, subconsciously.
Yeah.
You got it? So I know how to walk. My program knows how to walk, and it knows how to watch out. So I'm not going to hit anything. Okay, great. So the point is this, and this, finally, science has revealed that 95% of the day, minimum, our mind, conscious mind, is in thought. And I go, oh, well, what does that mean? Well, that means 95% of the day you are not driving the vehicle with your conscious mind. Your biology and your destination is now controlled by the program. because your conscious mind's not, you're on autopilot. You're on autopilot because pilot is inside thinking. I go, well, what does that mean? I say, well, your wishes and desires are in your conscious mind. Your programs are in your subconscious mind. Yeah, but the programs in your subconscious mind primarily came from other people. By watching your mother, watching your father, watching your siblings, watching community. I say, what's the point? When I'm driving the vehicle with my conscious mind, I'm driving it in the place, direction, and what I want out of my life.
Right.
But when I am thinking and my autopilot kicks in, I start expressing behaviors that are not mine. They were automatically downloaded by others, so I'm not expressing my behavior as much as I'm expressing maybe my father, my mother's behavior, my siblings' behavior at that point. I go, what's the relevance? Well, if conscious mind was thinking, then by definition, conscious mind did not see what was going on with autopilot. And I say, oh, then 95% of the behavior during the day is not observed by us, number one. Number two, 95% of the behavior during the day is coming from programs. Number three, the majority of those programs downloaded in our youth are disempowering, self-sabotaging, and negative. So I go, yes.
We really don't see our own behavior that we're doing all the time. I mean, when people point it out, of course, we get mad because what are you talking about?
That's kind of fun because the story I tell in the lecture and everybody laughs and use it all the time because if that many people laugh then it's that familiar to that many people, and that is this. I say, I'm sure you had a friend, you knew your friend's behavior very, very well, and you happen to know your friend's parent. And one day you see your friend has the same behavior as their parent, and so you say, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. And then I say, you back away from Bill. Because Bill is going to go ballistic and say, how can you compare me to my dad? And everybody starts to laugh because they were familiar with it. And I go, hey, most profound story in the whole world. Everybody else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill.
Yeah.
Oh, explain that. The answer is easy. Yeah. 95% of the day Bill is thinking. 95% of the day he's playing programs that he acquired in the first 7 years of his life, which is from his dad and his mom. And when he plays those programs, because he is thinking, he's the one that doesn't see it.
Right.
And everybody goes, yeah. And I go, yeah. And guess what? We are all Bill. Whether you want to own it or not, we are all Bill. Every day, the moment we're in thought is the moment we go back and play the program. And yet we're the ones that don't see it. And I say, now, what is the meaning and the end of this? And the answer is like, oh my God. I wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going out to get health and get the best relationship and find the greatest job. These are my wishes and desires. I say, great. I go out, go through hell all day, come home at night, go, oh, it didn't work again.
Sometimes
and then
driving, though, that's the problem.
Yeah, but you didn't know you weren't driving. And all you know is the result. You got home and nothing happened.
Right.
And yet you left with, I am going to find this. And then so your thought goes, what? My problem isn't me. My problem is the universe is not supporting me. I'm a victim of circumstances. I'm a victim of the world. And I go, well, that's the problem, because now that you said you're victim, you're saying I have no power. And the fact was, in simple reality, you controlled every minute of that day, except 95% of it was controlled by programs in your subconscious that you didn't see. And since most of them were sabotaging, it was invisible. And if it's invisible, then that gives you the moment to say, it wasn't me that made my life this way. It was outside that made my life this way. I go, well, it was invisible.
How do we change it? We have very little time left. You've got to tell us. I mean, how do we reprogram it? Because that's it. I mean, it appears that program for success or failure. How do we reprogram?
Okay, it's very important to understand. Remember I said there are two different functions. Conscious mind creative, wishes and desires, subconscious programs. Okay? Now I say, yeah, but they also learn in different ways. Conscious mind being creative can learn in what way? Read a self-help book. Listen to this conversation that we're having right here. Go watch a video, a movie, go to a lecture. All this information comes in. The conscious mind goes, yeah, I got it. I read the book. If you give me a test on this book, I'll get 100%. I say, yeah. Now that you read the book, did your life change? The answer is no. Same life, but I'm pretty conscious about what I should be, how to do it. I don't know why my life is not different because of this. And the answer is this. Subconscious mind's a habit mind. It does not learn by that creativity. So what's the relevance? The relevance is this. Read the book. Yeah, conscious mind educated. Subconscious mind didn't learn anything. Go to the lecture. Yeah, conscious mind learned everything. Subconscious mind didn't learn anything. I go, oh my God, then my conscious mind could be super bright. And my subconscious mind has got all the negative programs and it never got touched. I said, yeah, because you didn't know how to record. And that was the important part. How does the subconscious mind learn? Not by creativity. I say, how does it learn? I say, well, first 7 years, it learned because of hypnosis. That you were in theta.
Right.
You go, oh, so hypnosis? I go, yeah, but here's interesting. You can do self-hypnosis. Because every night when you go to bed, the higher vibration of consciousness quiets down, the vibrations get lower because you're going to go to the lowest vibration called delta, which is sleep. But between consciousness, alpha and beta, higher vibration, between that and sleep is theta. So every night as you go to bed, guess what? Just as you start to go unconscious, you're in theta. So if you have earphones on and put on a program of what you want to be, then every night as you go to bed, you play that, your conscious mind checks out, your subconscious mind is online, and it will download what's on the, it's self-hypnosis, download what's on the program, okay? So that's how you do the first 7 years, is hypnosis, and you can do that every night that way. Number 2, how did you learn something new after 7? And the answer is repetition.
Right.
How many times did you have to say ABC till you could get to Z? You repeated it over and over and over, every time getting another letter, another letter, until you got all of them down. You got A to Z, and then I say, what? Guess what? Never had to do it again. After you created the habit, it's in there now. A to Z, I can figure out my whole alphabet. Anything I learned and repeated and practice, it's practice, habituation. You want to change something? Then you got to create a new behavior. But you have to be conscious enough to practice the new behavior. The more you practice the behavior, the more it becomes imprinted as a program, okay? So you can rewire it by changing your behavior, but you have to be conscious of it. It's not a sticky note on the refrigerator. That is a wish. I mean, why? It's no practice. It's just every now and then I look at the door of the refrigerator. Oh, yeah, don't eat the donut as I'm eating the donut, because that's not a practice, okay? Practice means you do it. And then lastly, and most importantly, understanding that necessity is the mother of invention. Nature has provided a new modality of psychology that's most amazing. It engages what is called super learning, meaning you can download new beliefs in matters of minutes, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. You can rewrite a belief you had your whole life, but you have to know how to push the record button. And I say, oh, well, what are these new modalities? Collectively, they're called energy psychology. And many of them, they all come out with the same results, and although they seem to have different ways of getting into it, different, programs how to get into this learning state, they all end up being super learning in some degree, where you can download a new belief in minutes. And this is, what's that?
Where do you get this?
Well, I have a list of them on my website, brucelipton.com. Under resources, it's called Belief Change, Energy Psychology Modalities. There are a whole bunch of different ones, but they essentially all do about the same thing. It is a way of pushing the record button, and you can walk away 6, 7, 10 minutes later with a completely different behavior than you had, and it's a permanent change. Mm-hmm. And now you could say this is new age. I just want to add this. A friend of mine who has become a friend of mine since he got involved with experiencing it himself is Jeff Fannin, a neuroscientist who was doing brain mapping. And someone in his lab learned the one technique that I know very well called Psych-K, and came back to the lab and said, oh, you can change your beliefs in a few minutes. And he said, look, we do neuro brain mapping. That's not possible at all. You can't do it in a few minutes. So he said, oh, look, here, we're in the lab. Let me put the wires on my own head. You do the process and change my belief. Well, that was the moment his whole career changed. He saw something that happened in 7 minutes on the neuroscan. He said, this is not possible. There's no place in any literature that says that this is possible. And now his whole research is that. As a matter of fact, you can take an audience, have somebody volunteer for a belief change, come on the front of the stage, put the wires on their head, project above their head the screen of the live EEG as they're sitting on the stage, go through this belief process change. And the audience, even untrained in reading the EEG, goes, oh, because they can see a complete radical change in the readout of the brain within minutes. And so it's like, oh, thank God. Why? Because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to write my book. I wouldn't be able to have the life that I have today. Why? Because I had to go back and see what programs were stifling me? And now, just quickly, because I know time is short, but I want to say, how do you know what the programs are? Because you weren't conscious when the programs were coming in. So then the jokey part, because it's kind of fun, is this. 95% of your life is coming from the subconscious.
True.
Your life is a printout of your subconscious programs. Mm-hmm. Point. Anything you like that comes into your life comes in because you have a program to encourage that being there. Okay. But here's the other one. Anything you want, but you struggle to get, that you work hard, that you put a lot of effort into, that you sweat over to make it happen. I go, why are you working so hard? And the answer is simple. Because inevitably, the subconscious program doesn't support that being in your life. So right away, you don't have to go through any kind of analysis of psychoanalysis, who did what to who. That's killing the messenger over the message. The message is your behavior has been shaped, and if you can see what your behavior is doing, then you can go back and change the shape. So basically, you just look at your life and find where your struggles are and recognize wherever those struggles are, wherever you're working very hard to make something happen, there's a belief that's not supporting you. Wow. And then now you know where to go to start. How do I change the belief? Well, first identify where's the belief. Right. So these processes, energy, psychology, modalities, get involved with doing that. And what's really interesting about it, number one, is that these energy, psychology, modalities are all basically the same in regard to super learning. And the moment that belief changes, the life will change. Now, it's interesting because something said, well, I'm having trouble finding a love relationship. Well, I said, well, good, I could give a balance here. That's what they call it, change their belief about that. But you're not going to walk out the door and then 1 minute find someone you love. You're going to have to go through your life and then find the one you love. So it takes you involvement. But I can show you how fast the change is if we do it with somebody with a phobia. Like, let's say they're afraid of spiders, snakes, whatever. And I go, okay, that's a fear, which is a program. And I say, okay, we can change the program, and guess what? 5, 6, 7 minutes later, bring in that stimulus that provoked them before. After 5 or 6, 7 minutes, this thing will temper that whole thing, and they will not respond the same.
I mean, so we can go to your website, brucelipton.com, and you can download different ones in different...
Or you can, no, their websites. I've given a list of about 20 different versions of these psychology ones. And I'm not going to say which one is... It's an independent... It's an individual thing. Which one feels good for you? It's because it's your belief system. You got to really say, oh, that sounds good to me. Then do that one.
Okay, all right.
Because that's the one that feels good.
We just download them and listen to them, right?
Well, you got to see what the programs are. Each of them is a different thing. There's like a practice, but the Psych K practice one, the one I know, okay, the one that's profoundly changed my life and people around me, it's called the balance, and it's really just the harder part is making the belief statement you want. And then once you have that, it's a simple process of an exercise is getting into a what's called the whole brain state. Okay. Which then opens up a window of super learning. So a belief can be just downloaded, just like recording on a recording device, okay? But that's a physical expression of a whole brain state. And I say, what does that mean? A short time, but here it is. A child 3 years old in a family can learn 3 different languages simultaneously in the family as independent languages with their own vocabulary and grammar.
Right.
Okay? And I say, yeah, now teach a 10-year-old in one new language. All of a sudden, learning one new language at 10 is much harder than learning 3 languages at 3. What happened? The answer is this. Before 7, both hemispheres of the brain, right and left, and they have different characters to associate with them. So generally, let's just say my left brain is logic and my right brain is emotion, which is one of the divisions. I go, what's interesting? Before age 7, they're both in harmony and they're working together. Mm-hmm. After age 7, it's called brain dominance. It's like a wave. Sometimes during the day you're in left brain, then later you're in right brain, then you're in left brain, then you're in right brain. So during the day, sometimes you're in left, you're more logical, and sometimes later in the day you get more emotional, and that's just because of the dominance of the hemisphere. And I say, yeah, but to put down a new download, number one is you got to have both hemispheres generally in integration. So the whole brain, which is just a posture, it's neuro-linguistic programming, brain gym, basically is how you can get both hemispheres to work in harmony. And if you get both of them to work in harmony, at the moment they're in harmony, then that statement of your new belief can be downloaded. Just like the 3-year-old can learn it that fast, so can you. And it's important. And just to clear up, one of the most frustrating things is a lot of people talk to themselves. I'm going to give a good talking to myself not to do this. I go, don't do that again. Don't do that again. I keep telling myself, I go, who are you talking to? Oh, I'm talking to my subconscious to tell it not to play the program. And I go, there's a problem. There is nobody in the subconscious. It's a machine. It's the equivalent of a CD recorder. You can put a CD in there, push play, the program's playing, and I say, okay, now talk to the recorder and see if it will change the program. And the answer is, nobody's in there. Nobody's going to listen to you. You're going to get frustrated because you're going to keep talking to yourself and then still finding you're replaying the same behavior. And the answer is, yeah, because it was not an appropriate way to change the program.
Right.
And so I say, yeah, appropriate way, hypnosis, repetition, energy psychology.
So
those are the.
And we're out of time. However, go back to number one. You said play the things that you want to change right before bed in that theta wave, right? Because you're getting.
Well, just as you're going on to sleep, yes.
4 things you want to hear. Do you get recordings? How do you do it? Like what?
Well, the first time I did it is that there were tapes. They're called subliminal tapes a long time ago. I remember I did one by Louise Hay on patience or something like that. And somebody, these were dialogues about these topics, patience, love, health, whatever they are. And people have pre-recorded things. A simpler way, if you really, is to talk to yourself like you were teaching yourself and giving yourself this is what you want and this is blah, blah, blah. And then once you record that, if you play it, it will hear your program, and repetition of playing it will put that into the program.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to record myself telling myself certain things because, to me, that's the best way to change. And I want to tell myself.
And you repeat it. You got to do like a good 15, 20 minutes of it. Why? Because there's a part where you're still awake, and then there's a part where you're slipping off. It's when you're slipping off is when the recording starts. So if you put it on, you're hearing the recording at the beginning. And that's why it was interesting, because the one I did with Louise Hay had at the very beginning a calming exercise, to relax. And guess what? I heard the tape maybe the first 1.5 times. But the third time, when I started listening to tape, the relaxation thing got me so relaxed that it really pushed me into theta. And then the rest of the tape, I didn't hear the rest of it. I never heard the rest of the tape after that. It was always because I was sleeping by then. So this is a very important way of doing that. It's very simple, and just have it play at night and repeat. Talk to yourself in very positive terms of what exactly you see, what you want, and then you're programming the subconscious to look for that when your conscious is busy. Now it says, oh wait, I'm looking for love. Oh, I'm looking for positive here. I'm looking for health here. It's like, oh, the subconscious mind, being autopilot, will take you to that destination.
And to bring it full circle, it becomes physical. It becomes who you are. Your thoughts become who you are. To bring it full circle, epigenetically, literally your genes change. Literally your physical being, your world changes. We become who we, tell ourselves we are, who we told who we are. We become our thoughts. We really do. And that's that could be for better or for worse. And biology of belief. Now, we started this conversation with the title of the book. Now I hope it makes sense to more people. The biology of belief, because it starts with our belief. And then our biology changes, and we become that person. The good news, folks, is you become a new person, but we got to change who we are. We have to change our environments. Of course, cellular detox. Of course, change our environment in those ways. But the one that people forget about is we become who we think we are. And, man, I'll tell you what, biology of belief, you said it before we got online here. You said, look, hey, 10 years ago, you added 40 more pages. And that's all that needed changed in 10 years. That book is so relevant to this day. I'm going to get it again. Can we get the new one with the 40 extra pages? Because I want the new one.
Okay, just send me your mailing address, Dan, and we'll make sure we get one right out to you.
So, can other people buy the new one too?
It's at the bookstores right now. So it's there.
I didn't know there was 40 new pages. I'm coming out of my skin. I was captivated by this. Honestly, you can see that I was, because I understand the power of thought. I do. I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it in the people that I see and coach. So, Bruce, I can't thank you enough. And I'll tell you what, Meredith, I want to get him at our seminar. Listen, we'll have a room full of 300-400 doctors that need to hear hear that. I want to hook the thing up, and I want you to come to Scottsdale, Arizona. What are you doing in November, beginning in November? There. So, sleep.
Thank you, Dan and Meredith. Thank you so much, and
Yep.
I appreciate the opportunity of being here. I appreciate the audience very much
Yes,
because this was my academic career,
Yeah.
was really to interface the medical community,
Yeah.
and I love doing it with the new science.
Well, listen, I'm going to get you in November. We're going to teach doctors. 300-400 doctors need to hear this.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. All the way from New Zealand on Skype, right? You're in New Zealand. I'm here in Atlanta.
Absolutely.
Yeah, technology is amazing, right? So that was
That's-
great information. It's going to change the world. Thank you, Bruce. And Meredith, we're signing off. You want to sign us off?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Lipton. I've just been taking notes and enjoying the information so much. So when does the newest version of Biology of Belief come out?
It's out.
It's out.
So,
All right, beautiful. All right, guys. So go pick up a copy today. And thanks so much for joining us. And we'll see you next time. So take care, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Bye-bye.